Christopher. We're here talking about your film Radical, and I actually just interviewed Eugenio, and he talked about how he found Paloma through Wired magazine, and that kind of got the wheels rolling. How did you become a part of the project?
He sent me the Wired magazine article that they bought the rights to. We had worked together before my very first movie, which won Sundance in 2007. And it was a good experience. His producing partner now, the co-owner of the studio, Tripas, with him, was my classmate at Columbia. I hired him to produce that movie. He was just getting to know Eugenio at the time. He's much smarter than me, so he kept his career married to Eugenio's. They've gone on to I, on the other hand, kept on the starving artist path. So it was fortuitous when they sent this to me. I think they probably saw something in my sensibility back then that they thought would be right for this one now. But that's how it came to me.
Yeah. I mean, were there challenges in terms of the location and being in Mexico? And
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, extreme challenges. I mean, we're shooting in places of extreme depressed resources. I mean, lack of literally potable water anywhere, like lack of water. Water has to get trucked in trucks. This is the kind of towns we shot in. And on the one hand, it makes for extreme hardship from a production standpoint. On the other hand, it gave us this verisimilitude that really recreates the world that we're telling the story in. And from the standpoint of creating a setting, I'm huge on kind of casting locations and making sure my actors are in a place that tells them the story. They don't have to make believe where they are. They're feeling it. It's a huge thing for me. And so on the one hand, it was difficult, but on the other hand, it was vital. And I think it comes off on the screen in terms of just the naturalism, the realism, and frankly, the performances that are the same, that are very naturalistic and realistic and not at all, embellished.
Yeah. So you co-wrote. Were you part of the?
I was the only writer of the screenplay.
Okay. All right. Then.
Yeah. Josh Davis wrote the article. He's a journalist, so he wrote the Wired magazine article, and then I wrote the screenplay and then directed the movie.
Okay. So here's the thing. I walked away from Radical thinking that the radical nature of teaching and this idea that if you teach children basic critical thinking skills, they can almost master any subject. And to me, it was like, it just seemed common sense to me at that point. And I'm like wondering why, I mean, it's like, I almost want to send my children to this school than the one they're going through now.
Well, yeah, and on some level, we've always said, the radical is almost an ironic title because it shouldn't be radical. It shouldn't be so radical, and it is quite simple. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the idea, the thing that Sergio did so well, the real Sergio, and that we tried to capture in the movie, was that there are different kinds of intelligence. And if you teach to what a kid can do, teach to his strengths, teach to his interest or her interest, like that's the thing, that be the way in for them to realize that curiosity begets learning, discovery begets joy, and that's a expanding process. That we start an educational, I mean, we spend 18 years of our lives, some of us, in education, and yet as a society, we almost try to ignore that fact. We certainly, if there's any criticism out there, we had too many teacher movies. Well, I can tell you we've had too many superhero movies, okay? Mm-hmm. This is a real superhero movie about a real superhero. But the fact of the matter is, like, how different would we be as a society if from jump, we had that approach? It's just a tiny little shift. But as you say, anybody can do it anywhere, and that's the point. It's not about resources; they had none. Mm-hmm. It's about a mindset shift.
Yeah, it's this idea that getting kids eager to learn, to eager to ask questions, to want to solve problems, and I feel like you're just showing that it gets that ball rolling.
Yeah.
and becomes, revolutionary when it should have been this way all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And the tool to that was for him to basically abdicate the role of the authority. I don't know. I don't have the answers.
yeah, no, it's truly amazing. So you have three amazing actors playing your students. So what was the secret to that? I mean, I see a lot of films starring children, and it's hard to get an authentic performance. And I think with your three leads there, you just nailed it. What was the casting process like?
Exhaustive, first of all, trying to find people who had something about them that was the right thing. Like Nico, I wanted this little insecurity. There's a bravado, but there's also something that's a little bit insecure. There was that side of the acting process. The real Paloma, I knew from the real Paloma, the one that we cast, this certain circumspect quality, this kind of like, this is my shell that I've had to put on, my armor that I've had to put on to protect myself from the slings and arrows of the world. So there's a quality that you always look for when you're casting. You want inherently to be there. But from the performance side of things, there's a three-part answer. Part one is, I always talk to and treat children like they're my equal instead of, just like Sergio, instead of looking down at them and being the authority. It's now we're doing this together, which is to take this very seriously. The second part was a lot of these kids were living the story we were telling. And so it wasn't really acting for them. None of them were professional actors. This is the first time for all of them. And the third thing was we had the biggest movie star in Latin America, probably ever, show up and work with these kids. And so in terms of like this anchoring influence, he entertained them, he kept them focused, but essentially they were riveted by him. And he was this incredible, Kenny was so professional, he's so generous, he's so on his game that it's just a perfect example set for them right in front of them. And all they had to do was imitate.
Yeah. So, I mean, was their dialogue scripted, or I have to have a sense that maybe there's a little bit of improvisation there to kind of keep things loose and flowing?
There was improvisation. I do something that, Hollywood would turn green over as a director, which is whether I'm shooting in my native tongue or not, if it's English, it's the same. I let my actors completely rewrite their parts. With me sitting next to them. This is the writer doing this, by the way, also. Yeah. So I have the authority as a writer. I might not if it's financed movie, but in this case, we had a lot of liberty. But I want them to make it their own. And if there's a joke, we'll keep the joke. If there's something important story-wise, we'll keep it. But that I think is an integral part to rendering those kind of performances.
And what was that process like with your actors, with these specific actors?
It was.
Did it go as expected? Maybe that's the.
Yeah, no. There was a lot of improvisation as well, because that's the thing. As soon as you tell them you're in charge of this, on some level they're terrified. There's responsibility for it, but then they take it to heart, and that opens up the gateway for the improvisational things to come out. But now they're the owner. It's not like, oh, can I say this? Now they're on top of it and they're participating. And I'll tell you, we did some of these classroom scenes where he's asking questions and kids just start throwing out answers not off script. And they're guessing. I mean, we even used some of those, I think it's because of this. It's like, and he turns like that, and it's a real turn, because it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah,
that wasn't in the script, but it was real, and then we rolled with it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you one last question here. And I'm kind of curious as to, film was made in Mexico. So dispel or confirm the myth to me of the subtitled film. What was, was the intent there to ultimately bring this to the United States, or did you have pushback on it? I'm kind of, the reason I ask is I'm trying to kind of opened the world to the idea of, yeah, watching foreign films in the language and not complaining so much about the subtitles.
Yeah, well, I think it's happening right now. I think where you're trying to go is happening. I think we actually have streaming to thank for that. I've gotten very interested in dark Finnish cop dramas for some reason, existential cop.
I've seen a few of those.
No, but I it was never a question. My first movie was also all in Spanish, except it took place in Brooklyn, and I never ever considered not doing it in Spanish because that's what's real, and I'm interested in realism and naturalism and doing things in a certain way, and the same thing applied here. One difference here is, unlike maybe a typical lower budget foreign language movie, this is an enormous movie in Mexico. It just opened on 2,500 screens last night there. Wow. And that's because we have Eugenio Derbez. So it's easy to forget. Actually, the primary market for this movie is Mexican. It's not American. So that's one thing. But on the flip side, I do think that this exposure that streaming has given us, first of all, to a lot more variety of content from a lot more kinds of places in a lot more languages. One of the greatest compliments we keep getting in this movie is, I forgot I was reading subtitles. This is coming from literally the exhibitors, the theater owners themselves, the chains, in an email. I'm probably not supposed to say that, but like, I didn't know I was reading a subtitled movie. Okay. But, you know, I mean, a Squid Game, Parasite, like, yeah. You know, I don't remember the subtitles in that movie. I remember having my socks blown off.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you're ultimately saying that the barrier for subtitled films is lowering, you know, that it's not,
I think so.
It's not as much as a barrier as it was maybe 20 years ago.
I think so, but I'll maybe flip it a little bit also, that it might be that our industry in the States is getting a little too calcified, and the interesting stuff is happening elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that thing that makes it interesting is what's drawing us to it, and we're willing to cross the bridge of subtitles to get there, and that's getting us used to subtitles, and now it's not a problem. I think it's still a problem because I just got a script today that takes place in a foreign country, and they did some dramatic backflips to have everybody speaking English. And I'm like, what the heck's that for? I don't believe it. But so it's still there, but I do think it's going away. And I'm excited about that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Christopher. I saw the movie a couple weeks ago. Absolutely loved it. And we've been talking about it on our live stream, and definitely encouraging everyone to see Radical. Thank you.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.